Our last thing we're going to talk about in chapter 3, and it takes 2 sections because there's 2 types of arguments. We are going to talk about arguments. This is where we've been driving the train with logic the whole time, was to get to this point where we can do some symbolic arguments. So before we do what I've given you on that sheet that I just passed out, or if you're watching on video, you can print out your own. Okay. We are going to do some arguments, but before we do that, I got to tell you a little bit about it. So I'm just going to write the first example on the board, but you can write your stuff right on there. You don't need to reproduce this. So this is the first example, and it says this: if the figure has 3 sides, then it is a triangle. You do not need to rewrite this. I just want to make mention of a few things here. The figure has 3 sides. Therefore, I'm going to underline that. That is the key word here. It is a triangle. So I want to tell you a little bit about the structure of an argument. Now, again, the stuff we do in here, we are flying through 6 different areas of math, right? We did sets in the first unit. We're talking logic in the second. We are jetting through at light speed. So this is a very simple form of an argument. It only has 2 simple statements because we're just learning how to get used to this. Okay, so if you took a logic class, because that was part of wherever you're going in life, you would then get to more complicated things, more interesting things. Okay, so what we have here, the word therefore, it's the key word because it breaks our argument into 2 parts. Okay, and the 2 parts are this: the stuff before the therefore. These are called the premises. This right here is premise. You don't have to number it, but it's premise 1. This is premise 2. That word is P-R-E-M-I-S-E, in case you cannot read my writing. In case the red ink is not coming through on the screen very well. Premise, P-R-E-M-I-S-E. If you don't know what the word premise means given information. Okay, so if you need to write that down, the premise is given information. I am given the following information. If the figure has 3 sides, then it is a triangle. That is a given bit of information. The figure I have has 3 sides. That is a given bit of information. And then the thing that comes after the therefore, this is the conclusion. So premise, the word therefore, that's the conclusion. And here's what we want to know. We want to know if the argument here is a valid argument or is it an invalid argument. A valid argument is where the conclusion follows logically from the premises or from the given information. Meaning, do you have to come to this conclusion? Is this the only conclusion you can possibly come to with this given information? That's what makes an argument valid. Okay, if you like to watch Law and Order or anything, you've watched law shows, they might call it an airtight argument or an argument with no holes in it. Okay, because what you start out with here has to result in this. That's a valid argument. An invalid argument is that the conclusion does not necessarily follow, meaning there are other conclusions that you could draw that would be equally likely. So an argument is valid when you have to come to this final conclusion. There's no wiggle room, there's no other option. That's what makes an argument valid. And what we're going to learn here, I'm going to do an example. You're going to at least start your example is how to show if an argument is valid or not. So I've got 2 examples on the front. I've got a third on the back. We'll definitely do that next time. And then a slightly different type of problem to finish out. So there's only 5 problems in this, but we need to take our time through these problems. So I'm going to now switch my screen to a document camera, and I'm going to show you how to do an argument. So last time I have to do this today. Lots.
Back and forth. So the first thing we're going to do, and this is why we've been practicing this for the whole section, the first thing you have to do, step 1, is you have to write the argument symbolically. There's no option here. Okay, you have to do this. And that's why in a lot of these problems, and you were wondering why we were doing that in the last section, why are we writing things symbolically? We were building up to this moment. So to write it symbolically, remember, I need to define my simple statements, and then I need to write things symbolically. So help me out. You're an expert in this. We've done enough of these. What do you want to call simple statement P? Sure, the figure has 3 sides. That's kind of the first thing that we encounter up here in the top. So statement P will be the figure has 3 sides. Okay, what should simple statement Q be? Yeah, that's the second statement I encounter up here in the top. It is a triangle. This problem is going to encompass almost everything we have done in this chapter up to this point. So if you have any questions, please, okay? I know that this logic chapter is just a big snowball, and this goes all the way back to section 1 when we talked about writing things symbolically. Okay, so my first statement is, if the figure has 3 sides, then it is a triangle. How do I write that symbolically? P, arrow, Q. There's my conditional statement, P arrow Q. The second premise is the figure has 3 sides. What is that? That's just P, yes, perfect. Now here's a fun little math thing. The word therefore gets used so much that it gets a fun little symbol. The fun little symbol for therefore is a triangle made out of 3 dots, just like that. When you see, sometimes the book problems will do that. When you see a triangle made with 3 dots, that is just the symbol for the word therefore, your conclusion. And then what is the conclusion? Therefore, it is a triangle. What is that symbolically? Q. Fantastic. Fantastic. Beautiful job. But here's what I would like you to do. Example 2. I'm going to pause there. We have not shown this as a valid argument yet. We've gotten it written symbolically. The next step there will be the major step. But before we do that, I want you to get example 2 to the same place. Take example 2 and do step 1. Write the argument symbolically. So define your 2 simple statements and then write out the argument. All right, so my argument is this. If it snows, I will not do my homework. That's pretty defiant. The next premise is I did my homework, and then the conclusion is therefore it did not snow. So simple statement P is going to be it snows, or it does snow, or it will snow. I'm not super concerned about the verb. Just remember it has to be positive. And then statement Q is I will do, or I did, I do my homework, I'll just call it. Again, I'm not super concerned about the verb. It just needs to be positive. Hey, Perkster, I made statement P, I did my homework, and I made statement Q, it snows. Is that okay? Yeah, that's fine. Okay, you can't get the problem wrong if you define the simple statements in the different order than me. Your work will just look a little different. Okay, just remember that your P's and your Q's are different, but other than that, you're totally fine. So now let's write out our statements. If it snows, well, again, this is a conditional statement, so it's an arrow, and statement P is it snows. I will not do my homework. Sam, I am. I will not do my homework, so that's squiggly Q. Just sounded like Dr. Seuss to me. And then remember, if you defined them oppositely, then you could have Q over here, then squiggly P. Okay, just keep that in mind. I did my homework, so that is Q. And then therefore, here's my 3 dots. It did not snow, so that's squiggly P. All right, here's step 2. Step 2 is you have to form the argument. This is the key step. If you're going to miss a step on this when you get to the test, this is the step. So I really want to take this carefully. Here's how you form the argument. First thing you do is you take your premises and you link all the premises, whether we have 2 here, whether you had 3, whether you had 19 of them, you link the premises together with and. So what that means is my first premise over here on the left, my first premise is if P, then Q. I'm going to put that in some parentheses. That's the first premise. And the second premise is just the statement P. So I'm going to put P right there. If you have another premise, then you put another and you put the next premise and you just keep doing that. But I only have 2. The most you'll have in homework is 3, but that's rare. I think there's just 1 or 2, just because I'm not trying to make you hate logic more than you probably already do. So these are my premises. Okay, maybe make a note. I just don't want to gum mine up too much, but right under here, you might write the word, these are the premises. And I'm just going to put some brackets around it so that I know that I'm keeping them separate. And here's what you want to know. You want to know, do those premises imply, arrow, do these premises imply whatever the conclusion is? So Q. So let me write this. On the left side of this, we have all the premises combined with and I want to know, does that imply my conclusion? We're not going to have time for it today because I don't want to rush through it. But then the third thing that we're going to do when we come back is we are going to determine if it's valid. And all that is you do a truth table. Okay, so when we get back together on Thursday, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do a truth table for this statement right here. So we've got 4 minutes left. So what I would like you to do, I'm going to give you 2 minutes to think this through. In example 2, we've written this argument symbolically. I would like you to now form the argument. Form the argument for example 2. All right, before I form the argument and we can compare notes, and if you have a question, please ask it. We have plenty of time. As part of your homework, okay, when we come back, I would like you to, for example 3 and example 4 and example 5, I would like you to write all of those symbolically. And if you have time for example 3, form the argument, but we'll do that again together. Example 4 and example 5, you're going to notice there's no conclusion. That's okay. Our goal is we're going to provide the conclusion, but you don't have to do that. We're going to go through it, but it'll save us a little time next time if you've already written it symbolically. Okay, so let's form this argument. What I do is I'm going to link the premises together with and. So the first premise is if P, then squiggly Q. And the second premise is Q. Those are my premises. I'm going to block those off. Okay, so again, these are my premises, and I want to know, do they imply the conclusion? Spelled it wrong. Can't talk and write, even though I try. And so the conclusion here is squiggly P. So this is premise 1, P then squiggly Q, and this is premise 2, Q. We block those off, and I want to know, does that imply the conclusion squiggly P? So if you can get example 3 to that point, then we are sitting pretty. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. It's great to